Hey everyone, in this video, in collaboration with LG, I'm going to be showing you how to make your very own cinema room, but in such a way that allows it to be easily reset so you can use the room as normal in between screenings, which is very important for some of us. Now I'm going to be using this LG CineBeam 4K laser projector, as LG have sent it over, and it's a gem for non-permanent setups, as it's got a built-in handle for easy transportation, and to keep things neat, it's got a built-in retractable power cord as well, which is really good thinking if you ask me. But primarily the reason for it being super useful for various setups is that it's got a built-in mirror system. So lifting up this top panel reveals the mirror itself, and it reflects the image onto the opposite wall. So this allows you to place the projector down onto a table or a shelf or even the floor, and just very quickly get an image up and running. But the best thing is that this can actually be folded back entirely to allow the projector just to project directly onto the ceiling, which is super cool if you want to watch a film in bed. Or you could just simply lean it forwards to keep it nice and flat so that it's not blocking anybody's view. Right, so when you're making a home cinema setup, one of the first things to consider is the screen itself. So that's the thing we'll work on first. So this is the fabric I'm going to be using to make the projector screen out of. As you can see, it is slightly off-white, but that should be okay because it will make it look more like a film projector. But this is blackout fabric, and you can get it in pure white if you'd prefer that, which would give you probably more of a pure screen image, but it shouldn't really matter too much. What we're going to do is use some wood from the local hardware shop to mount it onto the wall. So what I recommend is getting a piece of edging with a groove down on the inside, and then getting a piece of dowel that's the right size to fit in there loosely, because what we're going to do is put the fabric into this groove and wedge it into place using the dowel. But before we do that, we need to get another smaller piece of edging that can fit on top of the first piece, and then drill through them both at regular intervals along their whole length. Now we can take the top one off and make these holes a little bit bigger, and then use a countersink bit so that some short screws can fit in nicely like so. And this will be used to clamp the fabric in place. So the next job is to spread the fabric out on a nice clean surface, and get the first piece of edging and put it underneath, but only very slightly. Now the dowel can be pushed into the groove, and with that in place, the covering piece can go on top and get clamped down using those short screws. So with all these screws added, it should hold up the fabric nice and evenly, but we still need to weigh down the bottom here. So to do that, what we'll need is a piece of copper pipe and some end pieces to go on each end, as we'll be filling the copper pipe with sand to give it even more weight. Now, as these particular end pieces have had solder already added to the inside, it's just a case of adding some flux to them and then heating them up to join them to the copper pipe. Now a small pocket can be sewn in the bottom of the screen for the copper pipe to be slid into, which should weigh it down perfectly and give it something to wrap around when the screen is being stored. So it's now time to hang it onto the wall. Now, in most situations you'll probably want to mount it onto a flat wall, and to do this you can just put 3 nails in your wall and 3 corresponding holes in this top bar onto which they can hook onto the nails. But in my case, I'm actually going to be mounting it onto the edge of a shelf. So what I've done is add 3 right angle brackets to the back, and these hook onto some very small tacks that I added onto the shelf. So with the screen in place, it's now time to find somewhere to put the projector. Thankfully for me, I've got a windowsill just opposite the screen, so it's just a case of putting the projector down and lifting up the mirror, and that's it. Now, it's probably unlikely that most people will have a convenient shelf just opposite the screen, so what I suggest is that you make one. It can be just the width of the projector, or maybe a bit further if you want to fit on maybe a Blu-ray player or something like that. But you can make it using a piece of pine and some right angle brackets that you can get from hardware stores, and then you can just mount it directly onto the wall and it should do a good secure job of holding up the projector. So with the projector now in place, it's time to sort something out for the audio. Now, although the projector has got a reasonable set of stereo speakers built into it, the sound would be coming from behind you if you were watching a film, which would be pretty odd. So what we can do is use some bookshelf speakers. It doesn't really matter if they're cheap ones or old ones, because they generally sound pretty good. And we can place them underneath the screen in each corner. And because the projector has got Bluetooth built into it, we can connect it to the speakers using a Bluetooth amp. Now, this particular one was one of my previous projects, and you can find a link to it in the description. Super cheap to build, incredibly powerful, and it just connects to the side of the speaker, and once it's wired up, it gives it full Bluetooth capabilities. So it's a really cheap way of getting a full-bodied sound that sounds really good. But unfortunately, the acoustics of this room are not exactly great, which is why I'm having to use this little lavalier microphone. So we need to do something about that, and what we can do is make some sound absorption panels. Now, these are things that you are likely to actually see in a proper theatre, because it does deaden the sound quite a lot, and you can make them yourself. This is one that is done fully DIY. It was using towels that were from a second-hand shop, and it was just placed inside a wooden frame with a covering on top. And I'm going to be using these, so we can just mount them on the wall, like so. And the more wall you cover with these, the deader the sound will be. So it's up to you how far you take that. Now, there is one last thing to do before this setup is complete, but before then I think we should give it a go and see how it all looks. So, as you can see, that's looking pretty good. I can't really see any problems there. No obvious creases or anything, so that's good. But one thing that you might notice is that the black levels aren't actually that deep, and that's because this is a white room, so the light is shining off the screen, so it's bouncing off the screen onto the walls and then back on the screen, so it's filling in the dark shadow areas like on this roof here. So I need to make the room a lot darker, but I don't want to paint it because this is a useful room for other things. I don't want it to be just a dedicated cinema room, so we're going to do something a little different. And what we'll need for this is a ton of black fabric. It doesn't matter if you can see through it slightly, because it's only got to block the light, which allows you to use the really cheap stuff. Now, what we need to do is sew these together so that they are big enough to cover each wall and the ceiling, and then we can put some eyelets in each corner, reinforcing them with some fabric glue, which does thankfully dry clear. And once that's done, we can add some hooks in the corners of the room onto which the eyelets can hook, supporting the fabric. Once this has gone all the way around the space, we can do the same for the ceiling as well. Now it's just a case of cutting a hole where the projector is so that the light can shine through unobstructed, after which you should have something that looks like this. And it is very, it's transformed actually, but the best thing about it is, of course, it can be removed in a couple of minutes if necessary. So now the last thing to do is sort out seating, and for this I recommend these big bean bags, as they are very comfy, and you can just sit back and watch a film. Now, it definitely was worth investing the time in making the walls and floor dark. I've put down these little blanket things, as this is the difference that it makes to an image. As you can see, it looks significantly more punchy and contrasty with the walls covered than otherwise, and this applies universally to projectors, and that's why theatres always have really dark walls and floors and ceilings. So that's why it's important to do it yourself. and you don't have to dedicate a whole room to it, so you don't have to paint the walls black. That's why I've used fabric, because you can easily just unhook it all, fold it up and put it away in a drawer or something for next time. And the same goes for the screen. It can just be rolled up and put somewhere for storage. Now, image quality wise, this projector does a superb job because it's 4K and it's HDR, so you've got really rich colours and a lot of detail. And it's also got what LG calls true motion, which is their motion interpolator. So it means that it eliminates judder, so that if something goes across the screen or the camera pans, it makes it super smooth, so you can follow everything that's going on. Not everyone likes that kind of thing, but I personally do, and it's really good to actually see it in something like this. Now, another thing worth noting is this has a smart OS on it, so you can use the remote control to move the cursor around, and you can run apps like YouTube. And because it's a laser projector, you could watch a 2-hour film every single day for 28 years before it runs out. So it's much better than those old bulb-based projectors, and it means that if you invest the money, you'll have it for years to come. So you can find a link to the projector in the description, and a big thanks to LG for sending it over. And I hope you found this video interesting and that it's got some useful tips that you can use perhaps in making your own home cinema setup. But other than that, I'm Matt, you've been watching DIY Perks, and I hope I see you next time. Goodbye for now.